Australia commits to this work, Australia is honoured to be able to host the next iteration of this conference in 2024.
Excellency, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, Senator Penny Wong, Foreign Affairs Minister of the Commonwealth of Australia, Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister of the Republic of India, many distinguished guests, excellencies and honoured guests. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this inaugural ministerial session of the Indian Ocean Conference. Let me acknowledge, before we go any further, that we are meeting on the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. My name is Dr. Kate O'Shaughnessy. I'm the Head of Research at the Perth US Asia Centre, and I am in fact your pre-MC. Momentarily, we're going to welcome Admiral Shekhar Sinha from the India Foundation, who will be your formal MC for this event. But before that, we have some housekeeping to get through, which is ministerial photos. And so I have the role of shepherding ministers onto the stage for that. Let me confess that I'm a former Australian ambassador and very used to obeying the instructions of ministers. So I'm going to have to put that training aside and be very instructional with ministers and deal with you as you come up onto the stage for your photos. Let me also say, je parle français, saya berbahasa Indonesia. I don't speak all the languages of the world, so I beg forgiveness before I mispronounce anyone's names, but I will do my best. So, could I first invite, please, Foreign Minister Penny Wong to come up to the stage. She'll be standing in front of the screen, and I'm going to invite ministers and distinguished guests one by one to have one-on-one photos with Minister Wong, and then the ushers will assist ministers to take their seats and stand behind the seats for a family photo. Could I please call to the stage Dr. Jaishankar? Your Excellency the President. Minister for Foreign Affairs of Singapore, Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sri Lanka, the Honourable Ali Sabri. Tonga's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Fikita Utaikamanu. Ms. I'm sorry. Nepal's Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Honourable Narayan Prakash Saud. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation Timor-Leste, Mr. Bendito dos Santos Freitas. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mauritius, the Honourable Manish Gobin. Le ministre des Affaires étrangères de Madagascar, Ms. Vafitafika Rasata. Le ministre des Affaires étrangères de l'Union des Comores, Mr. Doye Doul Kamal. Minister of State for the United Arab Emirates, His Excellency Ahmad Al Sayed. Seychelles Minister for Internal Affairs, Mr. Errol Fonseca. Minister for State for Foreign Affairs, Ms. Shirina Abdul Samad of Maldives. Australia's Assistant Foreign Minister, the Honourable Tim Watts. The United Kingdom's Minister of State for the Indo-Pacific, the Right Honourable Anne-Marie Trevelyan MP. The Minister for Civil Aviation and Tourism of Bangladesh, His Excellency Mr. Mohammad Farooq Khan. Vietnam's Permanent Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Dr. Nguyen Minh Vu. Mozambique's Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, His Excellency Mr. Manuel José Gonçalves. And Japan's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Masahiro Komura. And if I could ask all Ministers and Excellencies to remain where you are for a moment, and we'll have a family photo. Further instructions to follow. Excellencies, I thank you very much for your time and your patience. The photos, I believe, have been concluded, so I now invite Your Excellency the President to please exit the stage right, followed by the Ministers, and we will commence the inaugural session. I think so. Oh, my apologies. You're the very important members of the inaugural session, so please remain on the stage. You're supposed to be here. I'll tell you who I do need to recall to the stage is the formal MC. So let me now invite Admiral Sheikh Hasina to take charge of this in a more organised fashion. Thank you, Ministers.
Thank you, Kate. You won't have to wait for that long. Firstly, very warm welcome to this conference. I am Sheikh Hasina. I am the Chairman of Trustee Board of India Foundation. And we are here to participate in the flagship event of India Foundation. This is the 7th edition, and we have always done it outside the country. And this time we are in collaboration with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Government of Australia, RSIS Singapore, and Perth, USA Asia Centre. Let me now invite Dr. Richard Walle. He will make a country welcome. Dr. Walle? Yeah.
I'd like to open by sending my apologies on behalf of Dr. Wally. He's actually asked me to step in today on his behalf. He will be here this evening for the formal welcome as well and share some more of his stories. And hopefully a few of you got to meet him earlier and catch one of his earlier welcomes earlier on in the day. I'm clearly not an elder. However, in our culture, when you buy into the culture, when you show respect and patience, two of our major values, every so often you get given this opportunity. So I'd like to open by firstly saying this is a great opportunity for me, but also it comes with those words. It comes with a great deal of patience, and it also comes with a great deal of respect, and the respect that we hold for our culture. So this is a big deal for me to be able to deliver this all to you today. I'd like to say by saying, Kaka, wanjing amabuja, wanji wajak buja, nganjerpen jerpen karajan wang nunak yak and yak and kora mortye. You're standing on the country and sitting on the country here today of our Gora, Mort, our old people. And every time I come here, there's many stories that are reminded, because many of our stories are ingrained within the land. We're right near the Derbu Yerrigan, the Swan River, which holds many of our life values and our life lessons that tie in to these traditional Gorandarm stories and dreaming stories. And I'd love to share one with you all today that my uncle shared with me. This is a story of the Jiljit, of the fish. And in our culture, there's many different ways that you can catch a fish. There's many different ways you can catch large amounts of fish in one go, including some of our traditional fishing traps. And he learnt this when he was growing up, and he passed this lesson down to me. He said he went out one day and they gave him a bag full of the crushed up shellfish. And then they also gave him a spear. a gidgee, our three-pronged spear. And they sent him out to go and catch a fish. And he wondered why they did so, because there's obviously many ways that they can catch large amounts with minimal effort. But as he went out, he just kind of trusted in it, I suppose. And he said he started to walk out up to about waist deep, and he started to feed some of this shellfish into the water. And he realized after a little while that some of the smaller fish were coming along. And then he started to feed a little bit more. And he had his gidgee, he had his spear, he was ready to catch one at any point, but he said it just didn't quite feel right. He said that what kicked in was all of his life lessons about making sure we only take what we need and making sure that we take care of the land and the animals around us. So he waited a little bit longer, he started to feed in a little bit more of this shellfish, and eventually he noticed, he waited for about 40-45 minutes, a large, unusual gilgit fish came through, and this was an opportunity for him. And he threw the spear, and he said he caught this fish, and he realized that they were teaching him these lessons subtly. He can have these large amounts of fish, but instead he was told to go through a traditional process that teaches us that there's many different opportunities along the way, and through those learnings, through those teachings, through patience and through respect, he found that that right fish came along, and he also got himself a life lesson. And that's something that always sticks with me when I come through this area, and it's something that, again, I'd love to share with you. There's many different ways that you can interpret that, many different values that you can draw from, and I'll leave that all with you, because each and every one of you get to go through that journey yourself, I suppose. For those that did catch my marman, my elder, my father's welcome beforehand, he would have likely shared a song with you, because we're part of a very important part of our traditional song lines through here. There's trails that travel all throughout, from hill to hill line and going on. And I'd love to share this song with you, as he gave me permission to share this, but also this is one of our traditional ways of connecting, and we always show that respect when we come to these places. So he's allowed me to share my version of it. Kumba Jenningambo Kara Munda Jenningambo 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 Wajak Buja Jenningambo Ngan Mort Buja Jenningambo 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 That's one of our traditional songs that talks about us coming from the hill line. For those of you that made your way through, you'll see out towards the east the dark hills, the Karamunda, our dark hill travel as we go through and head up towards Karakumba, Kings Park, one of our major iconic places in modern times, but for us traditionally, a very sacred area as well. I'd like to close out by saying thank you for having me here. Again, this is a great honour for me, both to present to you, but for my cultural steps and going through my own stages of progress as well. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the respect. It's a two-way street. We're always taught that by bringing us in here, by sharing this. It's something we don't take for granted, and it's an opportunity for our culture to be spread far and wide as well. As I say that, as I mentioned, for those of you who will be here for the formal part a little bit later on, Richard will be here, our elder. He'll share some more stories and he'll take you through parts of that journey. So I'd like to close out by saying, Marmjera nunak nunak calling Bol Buja, Marmjera nunak nunak calling Mort Buja. Wherever you're heading off, for those that will not be joining us later, or if you're staying here, we ask the good spirits, for those spiritual people, to look out for us. If you're not a spiritual person, we close out by saying this is a sign of respect between many different cultures coming together, different backgrounds, and an opportunity for us to share together. I'd like to say thank you for having me, and thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that country welcome. It's my pleasure to now invite Dr. Ram Madhav, the President, India Foundation. He has been the main architect of India Foundation. It is here because of his many years of effort.
Namaskar. and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege and honor to welcome all of you to the 7th edition of the Indian Ocean Conference. This is a series hosted by India Foundation annually in different countries in collaboration with RSIS Singapore and, of course, with full support from the Ministry of External Affairs of Government of India. We are happy that this year this event is being hosted by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Government of Australia, together with Perth US Asia Centre. We are delighted that in this year's conference, we have ministers from 17 countries, including one head of the state, and officials from 16 countries and from 6 multilateral organizations. There are delegates from over 40 countries in this conference. Our hearty welcome to each one of you. Friends, Indian Ocean is not an artificial geopolitical construct. It's a natural region. It is home to more than 36 nations. From the Persian Gulf to the Straits of Malacca, this vast expanse of waters is the world's 3rd largest ocean, covering 74 million square kilometers. Although the only ocean named after a country, the Indian Ocean is more a civilization than a mere maritime geography. Over millennia, its waves touched the shores of countless countries, carrying a cultural and civilizational message. The Indian Ocean was the dominant economic and trade power in the first millennium, with the Indians and the Arabs leading maritime trade, and it was a region of peace. The European powers rose as the lords of the seas in the second millennium, culminating in the ascendance of the Pacific Atlantic region in the last century. But friends, the global power axis has decisively shifted to the Indian Ocean in the 21st century. It is here that the economies of scale, with massive populations and massive purchasing power, exist today. Over 60% of the world's container trade, and 70% of the energy trade passes through the sea lanes of this region. Regrettably, of course, these days, it is here that many warships and submarines are also started appearing regularly. Countries in the Indian Ocean region face more of the non-traditional challenges that are common to all, like the climate change issues, ocean levels, natural disasters, and supply chain issues, as against the traditional security-related challenges that tend to divide countries and compel them to take sides. Indian Ocean Conference is designed to create a forum for deliberating on these immediate and imminent non-traditional challenges of the region and create networks to help nations effectively tackle them. Ladies and gentlemen, we are grateful that Honorable Foreign Minister of Australia, Senator Penny Wong, took the initiative of hosting the 7th edition of the conference here in Perth, and, if I may add, upgraded this Track 1.5 initiative into almost a Track 1 event. You all know that Australia is a major country at the intersection of the Pacific and Indian Oceans. We are glad that under Senator Wong's leadership, Australia has outgrown its Pacific Ocean-centric identity and joined hands with all of us to play an active role in the Indian Ocean. Ma'am, thank you very much. His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe, President of Sri Lanka, is a scholar politician, a firm believer in the distinct identity of the Indian Ocean region. He has been associated with the Indian Ocean Conference series right from the beginning in 2016. Excellency, we are happy to have you here this year also. Dr. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister of India, is ubiquitous these days in the global capitals due to India's dynamic interventions on the world stage. He too has been an integral part of the Indian Ocean Conference, first as the Foreign Secretary of India and later as the External Affairs Minister of India. Thank you, sir, for your unwavering support to this important initiative. Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, the Foreign Minister of Singapore, was our first host when we initiated this series in 2016. He never missed this conference, sometimes making a few-hour visit to attend the conference. Thank you for your participation this year also, Excellency. Finally, may I also thank the Honorable Foreign Minister of Oman, Minister Al-Busaidi, for his active support and involvement in the Indian Ocean Conference initiative. Unfortunately, we will be missing him in this year's event. Ladies and gentlemen, let me once again extend a hearty welcome to all of you to this inaugural session of the Indian Ocean Conference number 7, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ram Madhav. Now it's my pleasure to invite the Foreign Minister of Singapore, His Excellency Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, to make his speech.
Your Excellency, President Ranil Wickremesinghe of Sri Lanka, of course my good friends Penny Wong, Jai Shankar, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be back, although I had forgotten that I've been here since the beginning in 2016. And I want to start by thanking Penny Wong for the warm hospitality. I think she even arranged for the temperature to reach 41 degrees today. But you know what I mean. It's the usual Penny Wong welcome, and we're all very grateful for getting us all together. I should also say today is the eve of Chinese New Year. It's a big deal in Singapore. This is the day when extended families get together for a reunion dinner. So I'm sacrificing that for you. But in a way, we are getting together as an extended Indian Ocean family to look forward to the new year. The theme for this year's conference is very apt: a stable and sustainable Indian Ocean. I'm going to confine my ruminations today to basically two themes. First, the strategic significance of the Indian Ocean, and second, the issue of sustainability. So on the first theme, the strategic significance, I checked the large language model while preparing for my speech today. And the question I asked it was, what is the significance of the Indian Ocean and its relation to the Himalayas? So it's not something which you think about straight away when you think about the ocean and then to ask about the Himalayas. But in fact, the story begins there. For almost all of recorded history, the Himalayas, 8,000 meters up, and the dense jungles of Myanmar served as a major, significant barrier, but not completely impermeable, between South Asia and East Asia, and even to some extent, Central Asia. Because of that, you will understand that in fact it is the Indian Ocean which historically has been the conduit for culture, language, religion, trade, and even in more recent centuries as the vector for colonization. So think about that was a barrier, and in a way, because of that barrier, the Indian Ocean achieved greater salience. I then asked it, how many littoral states are there in the Indian Ocean? The answer came back 26. I quickly checked that Singapore was on that list. Then I asked it the next question. Which landlocked countries are dependent on the Indian Ocean? And here it gave me a more nuanced answer. It said it depends on what you mean by depends. And I should share when I had a bilateral meeting with my colleague from Nepal today. And of course, the largest trading partner for Nepal is India. But if you ask them, the second largest or an increasing partner is China. So then the interesting question became, well, how do Chinese goods reach a landlocked nation up in the Himalayas? The answer, the Indian Ocean. And that's why my friend is here today. So the point I'm making is that the Indian Ocean has great historical, linguistic, cultural, economic significance. The second sub-point about the Indian Ocean is to appreciate that, in fact, there are choke points in the Indian Ocean. So where are these choke points? Well, the first is in my part of the world, because if you want to get to East Asia, and assuming you don't want to go over the Himalayas, you have basically two alternatives. You come through the Straits of Malacca, and the pivot point for the Straits of Malacca is Singapore. And the alternative is the Sunda Straits between Java and Sumatra. As luck would have it, when the Suez Canal was opened, the shortest route between Europe and China and Japan, in fact, became the Straits of Malacca, because you didn't have to sail all the way south around the Cape of Good Hope. Now, I mentioned the word choke points because if you fast forward to today, and what is happening in the Red Sea and the stuff that the Houthis have been lobbing at ships, it's a stark reminder that choke points exist and continue to be salient for the Indian Ocean. If the conflagration in the Middle East expands, and it's not just shipping through the Red Sea which is affected, but also the Straits of Hormuz. And you've heard Ram mention just now, the significance is that about 70-80% of oil traverses the Indian Ocean. Something like 50 to 60% of container traffic also traverses the Indian Ocean. And any outright conflict, or even the threat of conflict, immediately raises insurance premiums, or in the case where you have to divert and avoid the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, an additional, I think, 4,000 kilometers, 4,000 miles, and 12 extra sailing days to sail around Africa. This immediately means economic impact. For a small trading nation like Singapore, and last year I should add, we actually had a record year for our port. We, I think, transshipped, or we dealt with 39 million TEUs of containers last year. For those of you who are in shipping industry, you know this is a very big number. So when Singapore says, well, maritime shipping is important, I hope you understand it's not a debating or political point. It's our lifeblood. And that is why Singapore has always been a very strong proponent for the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And again, let me explain why this is strategic and this is not a debating point. The moment a ship leaves Perth or Colombo or Mumbai or Singapore, that ship does not have to seek permission from anyone or pay rental to anyone to decide where it's going to call, wherever it is in the world. That is the legal and economic significance of freedom of navigation. Even if you have to traverse territorial seas or straits used for international navigation, you assert the right of innocent passage, you get to go through, you pay no one, you seek no permissions. Now, this is critical even today for economic lifeblood. There's another factoid which is worth remembering, which is if you take a moderately large ship that traverses the Suez Canal today, in fact, the largest ship that traverses the Suez Canal today takes 24,000 TEUs. But let's just settle for about 18,000 TEUs, which is a more average number. If I asked you to unload all those containers onto a train, the trick question is, how long does a train need to be to carry all the containers off one ship? And the answer, more than 100 kilometers, which is clearly impractical. Again, this emphasizes the importance of the maritime shipping, and that even in this day and age, there is no substitute for maritime shipping, and therefore maintaining the right of freedom of navigation as a right, not by grace of the littoral state, remains absolutely essential. We believe that this is a right that needs to be affirmed, reaffirmed, and we need to hang on to this. For all of us here from littoral states and landlocked states that depend on maritime shipping, this is something which is non-negotiable. Let me now move on to the second theme, on sustainability. It's a sobering statistic that last August, the average sea surface temperature reached a new record of 21 degrees centigrade. I asked more specifically about the Indian Ocean, and it also said, well, 2023 was a record year for the average sea surface temperature. And if you don't believe me, go and visit my good friends in the Maldives, and those of you who have been there in the past. The Maldives is a place where you can see for your own eyes coral bleaching. So there's no question that this is a clear and present danger. On our part in Singapore, there are a couple of things which we have done at the international stage. Apart from participating in the negotiations that led up to the Paris Agreement and to subsequent COP meetings, last year we co-sponsored the resolution put forward by Vanuatu, seeking an advisory opinion from the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, to lay out the national obligations on protecting Earth's climate and the legal consequences for failing to do so. I think there are many developed countries that would be very nervous of this resolution, and more importantly, if and when the ICJ comes up with a ruling. Nevertheless, we felt that this was important, and this is important for low-lying island states like Singapore and my many Pacific Island friends, where it's an existential issue. And it goes beyond coral bleaching. It even goes to the point of when many states are at real risk, not just of flooding, but of complete submersion. Last year, we also participated in the successful conclusion of the BBNJ Treaty. This is the treaty on the sustainable use of marine biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction. It's a landmark achievement, and we're very glad that it was a Singaporean ambassador for the oceans and the law of the sea, Ms. Rina Lee, who presided over these successful negotiations, and it will provide a critical boost for global efforts to protect the marine environment. Third subpoint on this theme, Singapore is also seeking partners for collaboration on green shipping corridors. This allows us to contribute to developing standards, best practices, and the technology needed to support decarbonization, digitalization, and sustainable growth of the maritime industry. Specifically in the Indian Ocean, Singapore is contributing to what has been called the Silk Alliance Initiative. This is an initiative that aims to enable zero-emission shipping across the Indian and Pacific Oceans by green corridor clusters, including focusing on a baseline fleet that predominantly bunkers, and obviously we hope will bunker in Singapore as well. We believe that we need to find collective solutions that brings everyone on board and leaves no one behind in order to achieve a sustainable Indian Ocean. So let me conclude that since the IOC was launched in 2016, we've been able to keep attention focused on maintaining the Indian Ocean as a zone of peace, of development, and increasingly also focus attention not just on the security aspects but on the sustainable aspects. Final point to remember is that if you think about the history of the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean, one fortunate thing that has not yet happened in the Indian Ocean is that we haven't had an all-out naval carrier-based battle as opposed to what happened in the Pacific Ocean in the Second World War. Fast forward to today, I think this achieving peace and stability in the Indian Ocean has become even more salient, not less. And our suggestion is maintaining a rules-based global order, negotiating international treaties, complying with those terms, seeking peaceful resolution of disputes, and preparing for a sustainable future are critical. And I commend the organizers and Ram, Madhav, the Indian Foundation, and thank you, Penny, again for getting us all together. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan. You have really put your finger on the right thing to link sustainability to the choke points, to the traffic, and the importance of UNCLOS to make sure that all these remain sustainable. And your effort to link the climate to the UNCLOS has been really very new path. Thank you very much. It's my great pleasure and honor to invite the President of Sri Lanka, His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe. Sir.
The Foreign Minister of Australia, His Honourable Penny Wong, External Affairs Minister of India, Honourable Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Singapore, Honourable Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, Foreign Ministers of the representative countries, Secretary Generals of the representative organizations, of course, Ram Mahadeva and the Indian Foundation, Excellencies, representative think tanks, distinguished guests. It's a great pleasure to be here in Perth for the 7th edition of the Indian Ocean Conference. I thank the Australian government for the hospitality afforded to all of us. I also thank the India Foundation for once again bringing us together. The theme of this conference, towards a stable and sustainable Indian Ocean, could not be timelier and more appropriate. The Australian continent is unique in that it has borders with both Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Perth played a crucial role in the history of Sri Lanka-Australia relations. During World War II, Royal Canadian Air Force Catalina flying boats traversed the expanse of the Indian Ocean, connecting Perth with the Koggala Air Base in Ceylon, the only air link between Indian subcontinent and Australia. Known as the Double Sunrise flights, they operated a non-stop route up to 32 hours in radio silence to ensure the success of a critical air route during World War II for the Allies. The Japanese attack in April 1942 on the Indian Ocean, especially Ceylon, were described by Churchill as the most dangerous moment of the war, highlighting the importance of the Indian Ocean to the British Empire. I was just talking with Dr. Balakrishnan, and we said there was no carrier battles in the Indian Ocean for the simple reason the Japanese sank the only British carrier. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me highlight a few important developments which I hope will make a contribution to your deliberation. Firstly, historically speaking, the Indian Ocean is a multipolar and has resisted domination by a single power. The multipolarity is a reflection of the essence of the Indian Ocean region and its people. As Asia emerged from colonialism, the newly independent countries of Asia, Ceylon, that's Sri Lanka, India, Indonesia, Burma and Pakistan, convened the Bandung Conference in 1955 to oppose colonialism in all its forms. The conference declaration to oppose big power rivalry in turn led to the non-aligned movement. Since then, the Indian Ocean region has been influenced by the spirit of Bandung. It has never become a part of the US hub and spoke system. The past 2 decades has seen the emergence of diverse framings of the Indian Ocean region and a flurry of diplomatic activity articulating various policy positions, tilts and frameworks. What is clear is that no single objective geopolitical construct has emerged, and we are left instead with a contested vision with multiple interpretations. The key frameworks that have emerged include, in addition to IORA, the Indo-Pacific, the BRI, the Quad and the BRICS. There are also regional organizations including ASEAN, ARF, ACD, BIMSTEC, SAARC, GCC, Arab League, OIC, SADC, EAC and SCO that have been established. Additionally, we have the operational arrangements that deal with specific areas of cooperation, including RCEP, IONS, the Djibouti Code of Conduct, IOTC and the Indian Ocean Commission, MAS and the 4 regional information fusion centers and the CGPCS contact group on piracy off the coast of Somalia. Along with these frameworks and groupings, we have also seen an increased militarization of the Indian Ocean, which is redefining power balances and alliances. In the maritime space, we see a building up in naval capabilities with India, USA, Australia, UAE, Saudi Arabia and China, all increasing their naval presence significantly. Therefore, balancing between the great power rivalry is becoming an increasingly more complex task. As a result, the space of maneuverability for littoral states is shrinking fast as this rivalry in the Indian Ocean region intensifies and spills over into decision making on political, economic and security issues. The probable question to choose one over the other is perennially hanging over us. Secondly, the geopolitical developments has resulted in increase in the strategic importance of the Western Indian Ocean that was not foreseen 4 years ago. This is in turn shifting the geopolitical emphasis towards the Indian Ocean. The Ukrainian war and the consequent Western sanctions on Russia has resulted in the resource-rich economy finding new markets in China and the Western Indian Ocean. For example, Russian crude oil is refined in Gulf refineries. Dubai has replaced London as the financial center for the oligarchs. Russia has developed a closer friendship with Iran, which is an important source of supply for drones. Russia is carrying on naval exercises with Indian Ocean countries including Myanmar and South Africa. China itself has played an active role in healing the rift between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Iran, its allies have become important players in West Asia. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization with India, Pakistan and Iran as members have the Western Indian Ocean as its outer limits. The ill-advised judgment of the US in supporting the Gaza war will diminish its influence in the region. The hostility of the countries forming the Islamic Arc in the Indian Ocean will prevent any close rapprochement with USA for some time. The Russian, Chinese and Iranian strategies are successfully biting at the US hegemony, thereby further weakening the US. The Indian Ocean stability therefore requires an early end to the Gaza war, followed by A, the establishment within 5 years of an independent Palestine state, and B, guarantees for the security of the State of Israel. Thirdly, the recent attacks on commercial vessels by Yemen-based Houthi rebels is a challenge to the freedom of navigation. We have to ensure access and mobility in Suez Canal, the Red Sea, Bab el-Mandeb, and the Gulf of Aden. In addition, we are also faced with threat of Somali pirates once again. The safety of undersea cables and critical infrastructure are also facing additional threats. The presence of drugs in the Indian Ocean and human smuggling has increased. The IUU fishing still takes place. These threats present a challenge to the freedom of navigation in the Indian Ocean. We need to refocus on the freedom of navigation in the Indian Ocean. Sri Lanka offers to recommence the discussions on the freedom of navigation in this ocean. Fourth is the expanding connectivity. According to estimates, there will be an 8-fold increase in the GDP of India and Indonesia by 2050. Similar increases are expected in some of the other countries in South and West Asia. This requires additional port capacities and new transport routes. The Suez Canal may not be sufficient. In this regard, India's 2 new connectivity initiatives are welcome. Firstly, the India-Mumbai-Iran-Russia corridor, and secondly, the India, that's Mumbai, Middle East, European corridor. Similarly, there are connectivity initiatives taking place in the Bay of Bengal. Work has already commenced on the Kunming corridor, giving access to western China. Thailand is planning the Kra land bridge connecting the Gulf of Siam with the Bay of Bengal. India and Sri Lanka are commencing feasibility studies on land connectivity between the 2 countries, making Sri Lanka a regional logistic hub with Colombo and Trincomalee ports available to South India. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Indian Ocean Conference theme this year, towards a more stable and sustainable Indian Ocean, highlights the 2 key areas which require focus. What I have outlined before dealt primarily with pursuing stability of the region. There is an equally serious, more immediate and existential threat that looms, and that is the climate crisis. Experts have revealed that the Indian Ocean is warming at a higher rate than the other oceans around the world. The levels of warming are estimated to be 3 times higher than in the Pacific Ocean, and coastal areas across the IOR will experience continuous rise in sea levels and face severe coastal erosion. The Indian Ocean is also rising at a level of 3.7 millimeters annually, and the extreme sea disasters are inevitable. The island states of the IOR are vulnerable and have to be provided with adequate resources to mitigate the effects of climate change. Changes at sea also affect monsoon patterns and in turn impact on agriculture and food security across the Indian Ocean region. They also impact on the biodiversity and in turn on food and livelihood of people of the littoral states. The Indian Ocean presents opportunities in terms of ecology. Not only is it our biggest sink for carbon, but it also provides potential for mitigating the climate crisis through offshore wind, solar and wave energy. Through seaweed farming and mangrove cultivation, we can increase the sequestration of carbon. Sustainable exploitation of our ocean resource is critical for our survival, as the ocean provides for our future. At COP28, Sri Lanka proposed 3 key initiatives: the Tropical Belt Initiative, including the Indian Ocean, the International Climate Change University, and the Climate Justice Forum. As the current chair of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, Sri Lanka is focusing on the interdependence between the Indian Ocean and climate change. The Climate Change Justice Forum aims to accelerate financing of losses and damages and includes debt justice as an essential component of the overall solution. Any proposal for mitigation and adaptation intervention must take into account the debt component faced by climate vulnerable and developing countries. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are living in an uncertain times. The stability we had taken for granted since the end of World War II, and the Cold War is unraveling. Globalization is being challenged, as is multilateralism. The climate crisis is affecting prospects for trade and economic development around the world. It is impacting on food security, livelihoods, supply chains, biodiversity, and maritime transportation. Either we can wait for global development to dictate our fate, or unite so that we may chart our own course. Creating a safer ocean environment by building confidence and predictability among users and enhancing ocean situational awareness will be key to maintaining peace and security in the Indian Ocean. The main platform that can undertake this important task is the Indian Ocean Rim Association. Ensuring a peaceful and secure Indian Ocean would facilitate sustainable use of oceans for the economic and social benefit of coastal and littoral states. An overarching architecture for the Indian Ocean that deals with critical issues is required. The basis for such a structure is already in existence, including the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea and the recently adopted BBNJ agreement in 2023 on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction or the High Seas Treaty. A code of conduct on freedom of navigation and overflight and unimpeded commerce and similar guiding principles on dealing with the climate crisis and the sustainable use of the Indian Ocean are necessary. Only the leaders of the Indian Ocean countries can ensure that these measures are translated to the creation of an overarching regional architecture for the Indian Ocean region. Therefore, the responsibility lies with us. I thank you.
Thank you, President Wickremesinghe. You have made very important points on the intense geopolitical competition and the impact of climate change on Indian Ocean. And you have suggested a few measures in addition to maintaining the sticking to the UNCLOS. So that's very, very significant points that you have made. Thank you very much, sir. Let me now invite Mr. Gordon Flake, Professor Flake, to the stage to make the final vote of thanks to the panel.
On behalf of the Perth U.S. Asia Center, it is a tremendous honor to work together with our Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, together with the India Foundation, together with the Rajaratnam School for International Studies at Nanyang Technological Universities, to act as the local host here in Australia's Indian Ocean capital for the 7th Indian Ocean Conference. First and foremost, allow me to extend our thanks to President Ranil Wickremesinghe for traveling 5,700 kilometers southeast to here in Western Australia to deliver a comprehensive and visionary opening address for this inaugural section. Also, my thanks to Minister Vivian Balakrishnan for your remarks. You've lived up to Singapore's reputation for always being the smartest one in the room. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. And finally, my thanks to Minister Wong and Minister Jaishankar for being chairs of the Presidium, leading this effort. And we'll have a chance to hear from both of you during the gala dinner this evening. And thanks to all of the assembled ministers and delegates, scholars who made the day today so rich as we had their thematic sessions. 20 kilometers southwest of where we are today is a small coastal town called Fremantle. And it is a port city. It is a historic city for Western Australia. And it has a lot of meaning for us gathered here today. It has been rather warm, I think 41 degrees today, maybe 41, 42 degrees tomorrow. But almost every day in Western Australia, it gets warm in the summer when the winds come off the land. And right around mid-afternoon, the winds change direction and they come off the Indian Ocean. Here in Perth, we call that the Fremantle Doctor. And the reason we call it the Fremantle Doctor is because after a hot day, by evening, it makes you feel really good. So we here in Perth are accustomed to thinking good things come from the Indian Ocean. I thank our speakers today for reminding us of that broad theme during this Indian Ocean Conference. There's also there in the port city of Fremantle, and I recommend if any of the delegations are staying over on Sunday, take a moment. It's just 20 kilometers away to slip down to Fremantle. There's a beautiful Western Australian Maritime Museum. It was built to house a beautiful yacht, the Australia II, that 40 years ago last year defeated the United States in the America's Cup for the first time in 132 years. And it was such an epic occasion, we built a museum to house the yacht. But the WA Museum also focuses intensely on the Indian Ocean. There is a beautiful shipwreck gallery right next door that reminds us of a different era where the West Australian coastline was rather frightening to those who are coming across the roaring 40s down south and trying to get up into the Indies. There are also reminders of an era of international conflict, of the dark days of global wars when Western Australia played such an important part in those conflicts. But overall, that museum also highlights the changing attitude of Australians towards not just the Indian Ocean, towards our oceans in general. My guess is if I was to ask most people in this room what you think of Australia, you would think of kangaroos, of course, but you would also think about beaches and beach culture. Australia is an outdoor, sun-loving, maritime country in many respects. That is a relatively new development. One of the exhibits in the Maritime Museum points out that 60 years ago, Australian beaches were largely empty. Other than a few fishermen, we didn't have that culture that we have today in regards to that. And it's a wonderful chance to talk about how Australia has turned. Its intense focus on our near neighbors in the Pacific, many of who are represented here today, but also increasingly a reclaiming of our focus towards the Indian Ocean. And so this conference, this 7th Indian Ocean Conference, is a reminder for all of us to turn our focus, our commerce, our partnerships, and our hearts increasingly towards the Indian Ocean. And we thank you all for helping us with that today. I appreciate that. Now, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. We have a wonderful gala dinner planned in just about 40 minutes from now. We've got some refreshments right outside for those of you who are preparing for them while they get the room ready. We would like everybody in the room to remain seated just for a moment as I ask our distinguished speakers on the stage to exit stage left, and then the assembled ministers as well to make your way out of the room. And so if the rest of you would kindly remain seated until the ministers have exited, we'll have a short break before we all gather again for a wonderful gala dinner this evening. So thank you. Appreciate it.